Hello everyone, welcome to Management Research Simply Explained. In today's video, we want to talk about entrepreneurship in times of crisis. And in particular, we want to look at important drivers and mechanisms which management research has already identified to create or manage startups successfully during a crisis. The current outbreak of COVID-19 has dramatic consequences for companies and pushed the German economy into a recession. In particular, in these difficult times, innovations are important. Peter Thiel, a German-American entrepreneur and venture capitalist and the co-founder of PayPal, describes in his book From Zero to One, the challenge of the future. If things change radically in the next decade, then the future is nearly at hand. No one can predict the future exactly, but we know two things. It's going to be different and it must be rooted in today's world. This means that if we want to be part of this progress, we need to innovate now. And the good thing is that innovation is nothing else than doing more with less. So we are now able to react on these radical changes and to create innovations that lead to higher productivity and economic growth and which create value for the future. One major role to create innovations plays entrepreneurship. Many different startups who act in different industries make important contributions to Germany's innovation landscape. However, the current outbreak of COVID-19 changes the startup landscape. Some industries grow, while others get disrupted. And some new industries arise. To understand the specific consequences for startups, we need to understand how a startup is created. The creation of a startup can be described as the assembly of many different resources, such as new technologies, necessary knowledge, or money. These resources can be provided by different resource holders, for example, universities, investors, customers, the government, communities, or other firms and established companies. Without any resources, a startup is not able to survive a crisis such as COVID-19 and to generate value for its customers in the long term. In particular, it can happen that resources cannot be kept or built anymore, as investors might decide not to provide more money or customers do not generate any revenue anymore. To keep or build necessary resources during a crisis and to stay competitive, Itari Green, the founder and CEO of Innovate Israel, gives the following 8 tips. First, be aware that crises don't last forever, they are temporary. Second, it's important to be transparent when communicating the situation with investors and to work with them together. Therefore, it is helpful to consider an investor as a human being and not only as money provider, so that the investor remains committed. Third, in a crisis, it's important to reduce everything that isn't critical and to keep the startup to a minimum of expenses. For example, reduce office space, communications, utilities, or taxes. Fourth, make business development and marketing as efficient as possible, online to the extent possible, and as cooperatively as possible. Create synergies among entrepreneurs and bundle resources across key areas with other startups, for example, legal or accounting. Fifth, look for new and other markets. It's time to get creative and think of adapting your solutions to markets that are less hard hit. A very good example in times of COVID-19 is the startup ChargedUp, which used to offer charging stations and now offers sanitizing stations. So ChargedUp became Cleaned Up. Sixth, it's important to plan appropriately for the various stages of the global market's recovery, as emerging from the crisis will be a gradual process. Thus, it's always important to have contingency plans in place. 7. It's important to invest time in identifying alternate sources of financing. Research has shown that while venture capitalists are to focus on their core business during a crisis, crowdfunding or the government can be a good alternative to general financial resources. And last but not least, have daily flow management, not monthly, as it is more helpful to determine the right steps to take. To sum it up, every crisis can have positive or negative effects on existing startups. In times of COVID-19, winners are, for example, smart robot makers, doctor-on-demand apps, or biotech businesses. And losers are tourism platforms, business travel support, or home rental companies. Furthermore, crises such as COVID-19 lead to new startups. So let's look now at some characteristics of startups built in times of crisis. One example is the differentiation between opportunity and necessity entrepreneurs. While opportunity entrepreneurs are the ones that typically come to your mind, necessity entrepreneurs start their business out of necessity, for instance, after losing a job. They are less prepared, have fewer skills, are less committed to sustain, and have weak growth perspectives compared to opportunity entrepreneurs. But also opportunity entrepreneurs are crucial in crisis. Another characteristic of a crisis is the different development of high-tech and low-tech startups. Whereas for low-tech startups, no difference in likeliness to introduce innovations or in degree of novelty exists, high-tech startups are less likely to introduce innovations during a crisis. But if they do, the degree of novelty of their introduced products or services is higher. One reason is that crisis startups are introducing products that are less likely to be based on commonly known and well-tested technologies. So new high-tech startups built during COVID-19 use, for example, technologies such as artificial intelligence, robots, drones, or blockchain. The last example are the different types of industries new startups address. During COVID-19, for example, most of the innovations are mainly either directly related to the virus, for example, COVID-19 tracking, or related to social distancing, for example, lockdown management. These were only a few characteristics of startups built during crisis, and as you can see, there are many different opportunities to create innovations. Furthermore, many of these innovations have the potential to become unicorns, because more than 50% of the Fortune 500 companies were created during a recession. And over 50 tech unicorns, collectively valued at $145 billion, were founded during 2007 and 2009, the recession years. And to sum it up, if you want to be successful in creating a startup during COVID-19, there are also a few things to consider. First, focus on recognizing opportunities, for example, with the help of future thinking tools, or make use of crowdsourcing, as we are all learning so much right now and so quickly, and everyone wants to help, so you can just let them. Second, consider the many different types of innovations, for example, product innovations, process innovations, marketing innovations, or business model innovations, which can all enable economic growth. Third, have in mind that creating innovations is always trial and error, and your task is to learn from all the mistakes you made. Fourth, collaborate with other actors to share resources during those constrained times. And finally, it's important to move quickly and to perfect your product, services, or processes later on. Okay, so what we know now is that entrepreneurship plays a crucial role in times of COVID-19, and that management research has already shown important drivers and mechanisms to create or manage startups successfully during a crisis. However, there is still much more research needed, and according to the motto of our chair, let's keep on doing management research with impact, as science is never finished.